Hi everyone. The subject for today's mini documentary is a liner that probably isn't that obscure, but certainly deserves much more attention and at least one book devoted entirely to its eventful life. This ship went by several names, but its final one was the Bianca C. This very interesting ship started its life in the turbulent days of the Second World War. It was being constructed in France during the occupation, and at one point it was going to be renamed the Maréchal Pétion. But this did not eventuate. Once the Second World War was over, the ship was finally completed for its original owners, the French company, and I apologize, I know my pronunciation can be troublesome, so I will try and get this right. Its owners were the French company of Marseillaise Maritimes. And for those who are wondering, that's what it looks like. Entering service with them in 1949 as the La Marseillaise, which is also the name of the French national anthem. This new, quite distinctive looking ship had the following statistics. Originally weighing 17,408 gross tons, with a length of 562 feet, which is about 171 meters, a beam of 75 feet, which is about 23 meters, triple screw powered by 3 Sulzer diesels that produced 31,500 horsepower with a regular speed of 20 knots, and should the ship need to be pushed, a maximum speed of 22 knots. The ship had a very interesting design. The bow had an uncommon whaleback, which covered the foredeck and all the winch and anchor machinery. But if you look at the previous ships, the La Marseillaise is an evolution of a very interesting set of design decisions. This is the company that gave us the box funnels. Just look up Aramis, Eridan, or the very tragic Georges Philippa, and you'll understand what I mean. Entering service for operating to the Pacific, and particularly to Japan, the La Marseillaise operated relatively uneventfully until it was then shifted to operate in the Mediterranean and to service the Middle East. During 1956, it was used as a hospital ship for the 1956 Suez Canal debacle/war. And after that, it was put up for sale, where it was immediately picked up by an interesting company called the Arosa Line. Again, this is also a company that deserves its own book because it's a classic example of a overconfident, rapid expansion. This company expanded so quickly that it ended up imploding. It did not have a time to consolidate. The La Marseillaise became the Arosa Sky. Entering service in 1956 as the Arosa Line's flagship, the Arosa Sky looked pretty smart and handsome, with a black hull, yellow funnel with a black top. To make the ship more comfortable for North Atlantic crossings, the open veranda deck cabins were enclosed and part of the promenade deck was also glassed in. Unfortunately, the company's finances were too fragile, and after barely 2 years in service, the company went bankrupt. The ship was put up for sale and it was bought by Costa Line. They needed a new ship to help consolidate their presence in South America. They had just brought in their fantastic new build, the Federico C, and they needed another ship to assist it. Their only other vessel operating on that route at the time was the antiquated Bianca C, which ironically is still around. that's a separate story. About $3 million, the equivalent thereof, was spent on modernizing the Bianca C, named after one of the founder's daughters. Externally, the ship was given a smart white livery, and it was tropicalized, so it was brought back to its original warm water and climate configuration, with part of the main deck extended, some extra lifeboats added to the back, and an extra swimming pool also included on the very generous Lido deck. But most of the modifications went to the interior, bringing a touch of Italian class and sophistication to its interiors. And it entered service, servicing South America, but also particularly the Caribbean. And it was here in the Caribbean on the 22nd of October 1961, as the Bianca C entered Grenada Harbour, its fate would be determined. That evening, there was an explosion in the engine room. Sadly, the explosion killed 3 people, but upon hearing the detonation, everyone in the city ran to the shore, and everyone who had a boat immediately set out to try and help. Thanks to an orderly and quick evacuation, as well as pretty much every vessel in the harbour, within 30 minutes, all remaining passengers and crew on board the Bianca C were evacuated. However, the fire could not be controlled, and Bianca C was completely incinerated. The fire completely consumed the hulk of the Bianca C, so much so that its upper decks imploded within the hull. There were attempts to tow the Bianca C, but the ship was just too far gone, and ultimately the ship succumbed to the sea. You can dive on the wreck of the Bianca C, and it's certainly one of the biggest and most interesting wrecks to experience in the Caribbean. As a sign of gratitude for assisting in the rescue of the passengers and crew of the Bianca C, Costa Line donated a statue of Christ of the Deep, and it is now in a prominent position in the harbour. Most recently, a duplicate of that statue was also created for a scuba garden, so that divers can also see the statue and other things underwater as well. I did mention that the wreck of the Bianca C is an extremely diveable and interesting wreck, and a book that does detail it in vivid colours is this one, Dream Wrecks of the Caribbean, and I've reviewed this previously, so you can check that review out. A basic overview of the Bianca C and an overall fleet view of its original owners, the Messageries Maritimes, can be accessed via this book by Duncan Hawes, which is part of his big Merchant Fleets series. This is volume 36. But by far the most detailed account of the history of this ship comes from this particular book, Costa Liners, by Maurizio Elizio and Paolo Piccone. The number of those who were lost, the number of those who were on board differ from account to account. I have based mine off this one. This book is a couple of decades old now, quite surprising, but it still stands the test of time, and it does present with the most overall information about the life of this ship. The Bianca C had a very interesting life. It lived through some turbulent times, and it met a dramatic end, and certainly it would make for a fascinating book about this ship. But until then, at least we still have the wreck to dive on, and information available on it to explore. So I hope this has piqued your interest for this overlooked liner, and feel free to check out these books to learn much more about it.